Hey everybody, this is Mrs. Anderson and I'm working on section 5 of Master Math Mentor. We're doing the algebraic approach to limits and continuing on. So we've talked about plugging in the A, and that is always the very first step. And now we're going to see what happens when we don't get something that we like. And so the next step we can do is possibly factor or cancel. And then a lot of times you're going to recognize this right off the bat. And you'll say, hey, let me factor stuff out before I even start it. And usually that's perfectly fine, but we're going to do these problems and just prove what happens because we want to know what happens when we get a 0 over 0. There's going to be a lot of different options, and we need to make sure we show that step and we're in the habit of it, especially when it comes to L'Hopital's rule a little bit later on. So there's room on here, but there's not a lot of room. So you're going to see that I'm going to go to some clean notebook paper to make sure that I can get everything fit in there, okay? So what we're talking about right now is what happens when we get 0 over 0. And one of the things that's super important, and you need to bubble it, is never show on the test. Meaning you can never write a fraction in this form. Otherwise, they will be taking points off. So please make sure you are following the directions. When you have a problem like in example 2a, okay, so I'm going to rewrite this, and I have the limit as x approaches -2 of x squared minus 2x minus 8 over x plus 2. What this really is saying, so I'm going to scoot this up now, is we are going to separate it into two separate pieces. So I'm going to take my numerator, and then I'm going to take my denominator like this. And when I plug in -2, I'm going to get 4 plus 4 minus 8, which is 0. And I get -2 plus 2, which equals 0. So now my numerator is 0, my denominator is 0. So that means I have this form that they were just talking about. But I can't write it on the paper like that, but I'm showing it right here. So the next thing that I want to try is, hey, can I take anything out? This looks like this is factorable. So I'm going to try this. The limit as x approaches -2, and I'm going to factor this out as x minus 4 and x plus 2 all over x plus 2. Now, notice I'm using my parentheses so I can clearly see what's going on. This now crosses out, so when I plug a -2 in there, I'm going to have -2 minus 4, which equals -6. And that's actually the limit that I'm looking for. So I just had to do a little bit of extra work. Okay? So let's try problem 2b. So I'll put this answer is -6, okay, there. And I want to keep it labeled on my paper so I can find it again. And so here I go. Now I can hopefully see that I would want to factor an x out of the top and the bottom, and that's probably going to help me out quite a bit, or even a 5 out of that. But again, we're going through the procedure to make sure we understand. So we have limit as x approaches 0, 5x cubed minus 5x over x squared plus x. So we're going to break it up. The limit as x approaches 0 of 5 times 0 cubed minus 5 times 0. Sorry, not what I wanted. Let me rewrite it correctly. Now I can plug in the 0. So I have 5 times 0 cubed minus 5 times 0. And I'm going to get 0. And I'm going to take the limit as x approaches 0. And then I have x plus, sorry. I'm working ahead for some reason, and I'm not sure why. So I have 0 squared plus 0, which is 0. So again, I have a 0 over 0 situation. I didn't write it as a fraction, but I can see that that's what it is. So now I want to break this guy up. And I'm going to take out a 5x from top, so I have x squared minus 1, and then x and x plus 1. Okay. Things that you need to be able to do. You need to be able to factor out a GCF. This was Algebra 1. We've done it in Algebra 2. We've done it in Pre-Cal. Now we need to do a difference of two squares. And these are things that if you are struggling with, you want to go back and do some review, take some notes off of a Khan Academy video just to refresh your mind. Because, again, this is material that's coming out of Algebra 1. And you've seen it in Algebra 2 and you've seen it in Pre-Cal. Okay? So now, when I look at this problem, difference of two squares means I can square root the first. Yes, square root the second, and there's a minus in between, which means the difference. So square root, minus, and then I do the same thing, but I change the sign. So cross out, so I have 5 times 0 minus 1, which is a negative 5. Okay, so this answer is going to be negative 5. Now, try 2C on your own, okay? Remember, you may want to look up how to factor a cubic. We have already seen it in some notes before. This is called the SOAP method. Same side, opposite side, always positive. So that's how you can factor a cubic, no matter, as long as you can cube root the first and the second number, okay, the first term and the second term. And this answer, if you get it down, will actually come down to just 0. All right, best of luck.